Here's everything you might have missed in the Loki trailer. Much like the Marvel Cinematic Universe in 2020, Marvel's God of Mischief has disappeared. During Avengers Endgame's time-traveling Infinity Stone heist, Loki got his hands on the Tesseract and promptly peaced out. Now, at long last, we know where he went: Disney+. Tom Hiddleston returns as Loki in the long-awaited streaming series in May 2021, and last week Marvel dropped the first trailer during Disney's supersized Investor Day. And while we laid out the vast swath of Star Wars and Marvel projects coming your way in the years ahead, we wanted to probe a little bit deeper for Loki in particular because this trailer is jam-packed with Easter eggs, hidden details, and unexpected connections that could give us major clues about what to expect from this highly anticipated series. Now, obviously, much of what we're going to be discussing is relying heavily on speculation about the show. And if any of our theories turn out to be correct, well, that could be considered a spoiler. So if you're worried about that kind of thing, grab a parachute and find your nearest emergency exit. Are all the spoiler phobes gone? Great, let's get into it, shall we? So the trailer begins exactly where we left off, with 2012 Avengers-era Loki making his daring escape with the Tesseract during Avengers Endgame, only to wind up somewhere in what seems to be the Gobi Desert in Mongolia and a sandy crash landing that mirrors Tony Stark's fateful flight in the original Iron Man. Next, we see the mysterious headquarters of the Time Variance Authority, a bureaucratic organization that maintains order in the many disparate realities of the Marvel multiverse. This building may look familiar if you watched The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, where it stood in for the Capitol. The Loki series also is making use of Atlanta's Marriott Marquis Hotel for this secretive organization's offices, which I also once stayed in while visiting the set of Captain America: Civil War for another MCU connection that matters to only me. Loki finds himself clad in a TVA jumpsuit wearing what seems to be a collar around his neck that will either blow up his head Suicide Squad style or inhibit him from using his powers. Loki is in an elevator whose buttons make absolutely no sense. Unfortunately, I don't have a good explanation for what these do yet, apart from the fact they likely represent different floors and different realities being monitored by the TVA. But hey, at least there's a cute smiley face there at the bottom to remind us that things could be worse. Not for Loki, but for us. Things are pretty bad for Loki. Alongside Loki is Owen Wilson. Wow, cosplaying as John Slattery. Just kidding, he's actually, as revealed by the captions, playing Mobius M. Mobius, a senior executive of middle management at the TVA who first appeared in 1991's Fantastic Four number 352 and is loosely based on longtime Marvel writer and editor Mark Gruenwald. He is bringing Loki in for interrogation because after escaping from his timeline in Avengers Endgame, he's likely thrown the multiverse into disarray. Not that the Avengers didn't do a bang-up job of that themselves, but Loki definitely is not where he should be right now. He's outside of time and space. Next up, we see TVA agents, potentially chronomonitors, entering a dim, torchlit tent, and in the background of the tent flap, you can see a woman wearing a poofy medieval-style dress. That gives us our first major hint that we're either going to be jumping around timelines this season, or at least going to a Ren Fair. We see a mysterious hooded figure with a sheathed sword carrying a gas lantern in a field. Now, this figure, who we see again watching Loki and the TVA from a bank of monitors later in the trailer, seems to be the unknown villain of this series. Now, this could be Richard E. Grant, who is rumored to be playing an older version of Loki in this series, or it could be Sophia DiMartino, who's reportedly playing Lady Loki, or perhaps Enchantress. Given the show's apparent emphasis on the dangers of meddling in the multiverse, though, it kind of makes sense that Loki's greatest nemesis would be himself. After all, what better way to get the TVA to expunge your record than by bringing yourself to justice? And speaking of justice, after that we get a brief shot of Loki in the Avengers Tower penthouse in his old costume, followed by Loki being brought to Time Court. And no, that's not a bit, we're pretty sure this is literally called the Time Court. Behind the judge, played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw, are wooden carvings of three mysterious figures, and these same figures appear in much larger statue form either outside the TVA or in its lobby. And while some have speculated that the middle figure is Kang the Conqueror, who we're going to see played by Jonathan Majors in Ant-Man Quantumania, we think these are actually the three faces of the Living Tribunal, the cosmic being that first appeared in 1967's Strange Tales number 157. The Living Tribunal maintains balance in the multiverse, especially from mystical forces like certain Lokis we could name. Given the Time Variance Authority's job and the fact that Loki is before a tribunal of sorts, it makes sense the figurehead in the MCU for this organization would be the Living Tribunal. Plus, the Living Tribunal was actually invoked by name back in Doctor Strange. Baron Mordo wields the staff of the Living Tribunal to train Stephen Strange. It's this long staff that turns into like a chain whip made of energy, and maybe there's a connection here as well to the weapons wielded by the TVA agents later in the trailer that seem to be kind of like a truncheon or nightstick variant of said staff. Anyway, moving on. Those living tribunal statues are also surrounded seemingly by stacks and stacks of books in the TVA headquarters. That has me wondering if we're also going to meet then and now the Children of Eternity who we first meet in Loki number 3. They oversee the House of Ideas, a giant cosmic library that collects the stories of everyone in the Marvel multiverse from across all the different realities. Now, something tells me that might be too much metaphysical weirdness for a single Disney Plus series, but a cool detail nonetheless. But then again, one of those elevator buttons was LK3, and that could be the floor they're on, so who knows? Back to the courtroom scene. The TVA canonically has higher-ranking agents than the faceless chronomonitor grunts who are known as justices, and given her position as a judge, Gugu Mbatha-Raw is likely playing Justice Peace, Justice Love, Justice Truth, or Justice Liberty. And here she's probably reading Loki the Quantum Riot Act and giving him the choice to either suffer some sort of horrible fate or help the TVA on a series of missions. Mobius then shows Loki memories from his perspective in either an effort to remind him of how thoroughly he got dunked on by the Avengers, to explain the concept of the multiverse to him, or perhaps to prep Loki for a mission, because we do see Loki in Avengers Tower earlier in the trailer. Next, we head to Roxcart, a larger Walmart or Target-esque superstore owned by the Roxxon Corporation. A collarless Loki wearing a TVA field agent uniform is flanked by TVA soldiers, and they surround some hapless dude who's just trying to buy plants while the mysterious cloaked figure watches on. After that, Loki falls into frame, hopefully not for 30 minutes this time, in what appears to be a door frame rigged up with all manner of wires. A TVA employee marks something down on a clipboard as Loki tries to regain his bearings. Now, this is likely a doorway to the different multiversal realities where Loki is being sent on various missions for the TVA. Next up is one of the single most jarring shots of the trailer, Mobius receiving something from a mysterious little girl in front of a horrifying stained glass window featuring a red-faced demon who's very clearly Mephisto, at least that's my opinion. Now, given what's coming down the pipeline in WandaVision, Spider-Man 3, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Mephisto's appearance in the MCU feels inevitable, and this is yet another clue. Now, we're not sure exactly who this little girl is or what she gives Mobius, kind of looks like a pocket watch, but maybe this is Kid Loki, it's a bit too early to tell. After that, we see Loki square off with Gugu Mbatha-Raw and the TVA, followed by a crumbling moon on the verge of crashing into a purplish landscape whose color palette immediately evokes Vormir, the planet where the Soul Stone was located. Adding further credence to this theory is the seeming appearance of Black Widow immediately afterwards, but then again, if you look closely, there is that same sheathed sword as the mysterious cloaked figure, so this could actually be Sophia DiMartino as Lady Loki, or maybe even Enchantress. Maybe it's a reality where Natasha didn't sacrifice herself for the Soul Stone, but who knows? It could all be a red herring because, let's face it, we're dealing with a series all about the god of mischief after all. Anything is possible. After that, we see Loki standing in the ruins of New York City with a collapsed Avengers Tower in the background, which seems to be a reality where his Chitauri invasion of New York City was successful because the Earth's mightiest heroes didn't stop it and therefore never got to have their victory shawarma. Our next reality takes us to an airport in the 1970s, where Marvel apparently solves one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. D.B. Cooper, the mystery man who hijacked a plane on November 24th, 1971, extorted $200K in ransom money, then parachuted from the plane mid-flight never to be seen again, was none other than Loki. Except, as we now know, he disappeared with an assist from Heimdall and the Bifrost, using Asgard's Rainbow Bridge to teleport to safety. There are a series of blink and you'll miss it moments featuring Loki seemingly in Roman times twirling around a woman in a pink tunic, Loki fighting someone in what seems to be a spaceship, and Loki fighting someone else back in Roxcart. The most significant scene in this sequence, though, features Loki in a weird headquarters of sorts with a neon L on the wall. This seems to be a funhouse kind of overrun by vines, maybe from that Roxcart plant department, and if you look carefully, you can spot 3 crude dolls in the background, one of Loki, one of Thor, and one of presumably Heimdall, because he does help Loki make his mid-air escape. But maybe this is where Loki is plotting his rebellion against the TVA, as we see in the final moments of the trailer, with Loki in his Election Day finest direct from the satirical 2016 Vote Loki miniseries. And while some of Loki's lackeys look like Fallout NPCs cosplaying as Loki, the best detail in this scene is the Polybius arcade cabinet in the corner. Now, for those who don't know, Polybius is one of the great urban legends of our time. Named for the Greek philosopher, Polybius was an arcade game that supposedly was part of a government psyop in Portland, Oregon in 1981. It was supposed to induce addictive psychoactive effects in anyone who played it, but its existence has never been officially verified, so it kind of feels fitting the only copy would be somewhere in Loki's lair or in the bowels of the TVA itself. One thing's for certain though, Loki's gonna have his hands full when his Disney Plus series debuts in May 2021. If these are all the details we gleaned from the very first trailer, just imagine all the secrets, Easter eggs, and deep cut references just waiting to be unearthed in the full show. In the meantime though, tell us, what did you think of the very first Loki trailer? Did you spot any Easter eggs or references that we missed? Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, make sure you stay tuned to Nerdist.com.